Hello everybody, it's me Nemesis, and we're doing a video that not only did I always intend to do from the start, but I also have not done before and did not lose any footage of prior. And I'm joined by people. Say hello.
Hello, Mario.
Hello. Hello, Jiren.
Fucking
Okay, I kid. I'm Cyber.
I'm Phantom, and I'm sure DVD is going to lose their minds when they see this.
Oh my god, you can hear me and Phantom from Cyber's side as well. It's hilarious. Do you want to tell people what the topic of this video is? Because I don't want to do it again.
Sure. Today we're going over whether or not Supernova is an actual valid thing in Final Fantasy VII, because apparently, even though we're in 2021, there's a good amount of people out there that think it's a illusion or just gameplay mechanics, or God forbid, an outlier.
God forbid it's an outlier. God forbid.
Oh, that'd be a shame.
We're also going to be dealing with the infamous bullets.
Alright, so I guess you can start with whatever part of that you want to deal with first, which I guess is the illusion nonsense.
Sure. So, in no piece of media that is canonical or non-canonical to Final Fantasy VII has Supernova ever been stated or depicted as being an illusion. It's literally just headcanon perpetuated over what appears to be, well, 2 decades at this point, or more.
Actually,
I don't
it's been 24 years, stupid.
Jesus.
That's
fucking
24
Christ.
years that we'll get Kakashi to do something to you. Anyway.
Wait, what?
24 years,
Like,
Kakashi,
anyway.
Kakashi might finally stop being city level.
Anyway, I'd like to go over today the Ultimanias, which are basically lore guidebooks. They're not like game guides per se. They're more like art books with lore sprinkled in between, and they have like plenty of interviews from Nomura or just other staff members that are involved with the writing process of Final Fantasy VII, and also other Final Fantasy games, but we're going to be sticking strictly with Final Fantasy VII. There's actually numerous statements confirming that Supernova is a legitimate thing, and going further into explaining how it works. Like, I'll start with the funniest one. There's one from basically the game called Final Fantasy All the Bravest, which states, and I quote, "Though able to command supernovas, this guy can't even spell his own name." Which is going to be very weird shortly.
It's not weird from the start.
So-
It's like,
Well, I'm talking about
you know,
a certain math equation.
You need context to explain why not being able to spell your own name is dumb. You know, normally if you can't spell your own name, that's completely fine though.
Well, I guess I should jump to the equation part, and then I'll get back to the Ultimania. So
I love it.
everyone over the years basically has thought that like the equations that appear in the background when supernova occurs is nonsense. That it's just a bunch of math that was just thrown there to look intelligent, but that's not the case. It's essentially just two equations to calculate the sun and the planets' like potential attractive forces. There's a third one that goes over the Earth's potential for attractive forces, and then the fourth one, it has a misstate. Like the fourth one is slightly mistaken when it's talking about the asteroid itself, like the math for the asteroid. But it's basically just a calculation done.
Masteroid.
Oh, it's a calculation that Seth is basically doing for the meteor to basically precisely hit the sun and cause the supernova. Which, going back to that first statement that we just went over, makes it very weird that this guy is basically a math whiz, but can't spell his own name.
I remember earlier bringing up the idea of Sephiroth in this math exam, and he's just aced everything, but he's getting to writing his name at the front of the page, and there's just his theme blaring in the background. It's like, how do I start my name? Seth, S-E-T-H.
Gonna ace the math
Fucking
exam.
math equations, but he's illiterate.
Gonna ace the math exams, fail the spelling bee.
Clearly, this is why Sephiroth is
spell clouds.
he's
Sephiroth,
such a math
spell
whiz
cloud.
that he forgot what letters were.
Sephiroth, spell cloud.
K O
L
U.
Anyway, I'd like to go over like Crisis Core specifically to start. So, Crisis Core has two things going for it for Supernova.
Crisis Core being
first one
the
is
PSP
in-game.
prequel to anyone who doesn't know.
Right. That kind of supersedes Last Order, and I still don't know how I feel about that because I actually like Last Order. But anyway,
Too bad.
in Crisis Core, there's basically a fan club for Sephiroth, and the fan club member will ask you, what is the name of Sephiroth's ultimate attack? And gives you three options: Supernova, Mega Flare, and Omni Slash. Weirdly enough, only one of those things pertains to anything to Sephiroth. I thought they were going to put in the Octa Slash, but no.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, Supernova is the correct answer, obviously. And then, more importantly, the Ultimania for Crisis Core says, and I quote, "In Final Fantasy VII, it is the strongest technique that Sephiroth uses, destroying planets with the power of an expanding sun, the resulting supernova obliterating his enemies. Within Crisis Core, it is one of the answers required to pass the Premium Fan Club's test." So, as far back chronologically, in Crisis Core, it seems it was something he had since members of the fan club were aware of it. I'd like to think that it's probably similar to the depiction in World Final Fantasy, where it's still a meteor being called down, just not to the same degree as in the main Final Fantasy VII game, probably due to the amount of power he had when he was in his safer form. But I'll go over the other guys just for consistency. So there's the 10th anniversary Ultimania for Final Fantasy VII that says, "Something is summoned forth by Sephiroth with both of his hands are raised. A meteor appears, destroying the planets of the solar system one by one. The meteor crashes into the sun, and because of the impact, the sun starts to swell. It erupts in a supernova. Everything around is engulfed in the tremendous shockwave." I'm not going to say everything that's in the Omega Ultimania because it's very long. I'll just explain the most important things. The Omega Ultimania shows that basically Square considers both versions of the Supernova to be canonical. Weirdly enough, it's very simple Japanese version, which is basically just an omnidirectional explosion from Sephiroth himself, and then there's basically a full, really long explanation on the international version. Like I can mention a part of it, like the beginning. When with both hands in the air, Sephiroth disappears from the scene. The clouds in the background break up into small pieces, and the debris is sucked into outer space. A star map showing the positions of the planet in our solar system is projected, and then it goes on to explain it in vivid detail, hitting each planet, explaining even the appearance of the planets, like Saturn, and eventually leading up to it, supernova exploding. So it's very, very consistent that the intent is for it to be.
Why was it so long?
It's like 2 whole pages. It's just
It
two
wants you
giant
to
whole
read it
pages.
while watching the animation.
I meant the cinematic.
Oh, the cinematic. Why was it so long?
Why not?
I don't think they thoroughly explained that within the Ultimania itself. I mean, the weirdly enough, the length of the cinematic does match up with the Ultimania going as long as it is.
Said that.
The interesting thing about this Ultimania piece, though, is it kind of explains that the area that they're fighting, right? Like Cloud and Co. are fighting him with the clouds. It breaks apart, very similar to how summons work. The Crisis Core Ultimania explains that summons drag opponents into their own dimension, and then basically the opponent is sent back after the move is done in the dimension. And we even see that in the story. If basically the FRs zack into its dimension, Sephiroth somehow appears, which may imply that he has spatial abilities, kills and then the dimension kind of disappears. So they do seem to even sustain their own dimensions, which is very interesting. The last thing I'd like to bring up is Dissidia. Death Battle mentioned the English translation of Dissidia. It's a lore piece for basically the Supernova move, but the Japanese version is a bit different.
Cyber. None of this matters. You know why?
Okay.
You know why? Because called safer Sephiroth, that means he's weaker because he's supposed to be safer.
Oh no, but it's safer for Sephiroth because he's stronger now. Take that.
But no. Shit.
Anyway, to wrap up this part, the Japanese version says Phantom is going to always do that until finally he gets chucked into something.
Galaxy.
Anyway, basically, the Supernova translation for the Japanese version says, destroy different dimension space and give despair. The Supernova will destroy the dimensional space. So, essentially, the dimensional space where Supernova occurs is stated in Dissidia to be destroyed by the Supernova itself, which is a bit weird, since most of them seem to go with Supernova destroying at least the solar system. But if you go off with this statement, we know that there's a galaxy in the international version, and the Japanese version it's stated in the Ultimania that the Milky Way galaxy is also present there. So that would upgrade the move to at least galaxy busting. And it's likely that it's far larger.
I saw someone recently argue against that. I saw someone argue against that recently, but we'll get to that later. I don't know, after this video.
Sure. So the now that we've gone over that every single piece of media supports that it's actually real, and this also further goes against the notion of gameplay mechanics. I should mention the main argument for it being gameplay mechanics, beyond the characters surviving, which we'll get to in a moment, is that it's repeatable in both versions, and that quote unquote basically the solar system can't regenerate. This kind of ignores that it basically is his own dimensional space, so he could simply just recreate the dimensional space, or it could just be that he has multiple dimensional spaces. But the thing I think is the most evident one is that all pieces of media just support at least that he used it once. The repeats themselves could be the gameplay mechanics, but not the initial usage of it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be documented that he used it in the first place in its safer form. So that, I think, takes care of the gameplay mechanics argument. So, before we get into
gameplay mechanics... Still gameplay mechanics, fuck you.
My evidence is that I said so, and you didn't say I was wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, both of you are disproven by the summons, but I'd rather not feed you to Typhon. Anyway,
Ugly. Which head of Typhon?
I was thinking the one that flips the world, which is
Both
kind of the back one. Anyway, the outlier argument is going to be twofold. So, the argument for it being an outlier, or that it breaks the quote-unquote logic of the game, is two things. One, the character surviving it. Two, why would it be real or something that Sephiroth can do if Sephiroth needed Meteor to destroy the planet? Which, let's do the Meteor part first. So, Meteor, people seem to ignore context for. First, Sephi never intended to destroy the planet at all. He was planning to make a wound in it that the life force would have to repair. And then he would absorb the whole thing, and it would basically make him a god.
Basically, to put it in layman's terms, he had to destroy the planet very, very carefully.
That also leads into basically a segue for the live stream itself. Basically, in one of the web books, or it's kind of like a web novel that's canonical to the series, we have basically a discussion done by a few characters, and they talk about the live stream and basically its functions. And the most important thing I think that basically they mention that Meteor. Well, they go into Meteor, but they also talk about like the durability of the planet. Basically, the book is called "On the Way to a Smile." Basically, within it, Barrett and Sid basically have a discussion on like that the amount of energy released by the live stream when like it pushes back Meteor was beyond anything that had ever been seen. And they do mention that the live stream itself like makes the planet far more like resistant to damage. The most important thing I think though is all materia originates from it, and the live stream basically upscales from any summon period, which would include summons like Knights of the Round or Typhon. We'll get into those in a bit. But they have cosmic feats well beyond planetary. And Meteor is Sure, we can discuss that. Sure, we can discuss that now. Go ahead.
All right. So, because people say Outlier, well, first of all, that's dumb, and second of all, they clearly haven't played FF7 because there's multiple feats even without the cosmic range that are pretty strong. Odin chucking Gungnir towards a cloud and splitting it. Shut the fuck up. It is around country level, at a generous estimate. The ultimate weapon, creating a crater, is around 351 petatons, and its dying energy is around 2 petatons to 400 exatons. Genova has a telekinetic yield of about 12 exatons, I believe. Another weapon that Cloud defeated by waking up caused a 20 teraton attack with the crater. The average materia is around 48 teratons to 760 teratons of TNT. And Bahamut, it was some moon, right? So I just want to make sure it was some.
And Bahamut Fury nuked the moon.
Yeah,
Bahamut
it nuked
Fury
the entire moon, and then Typhon flipped the entire world 180 degrees.
Can I explain this really quick? So, Typhon is my favorite of all the summons in how wacky its move is. So, in the Ultimania and in Dissidia, they specifically mention in Final Fantasy VII, both pieces of material state that Typhon literally flips the planet, but it's a little crazier than just flipping the planet, as our friend here, Nemesis, discovered yesterday. Do you want to mention it?
I'm not sure about it, but whatever. Nemesis can have his own...
So the calc, right, it's assuming that Typhon is just, like, spinning the world around on its own axis, but, like, in the actual animation, you can see that the Earth starts out underneath Typhon, and then the ground ends up above Typhon, meaning that he didn't flip the world around on its axis, he swung the world around his entire body, like, made himself the center of an orbit, and swung the world around him. So... He didn't just rotate the Earth, he literally flips it over the top of him.
Which is going to get higher than what it was originally put at.
Yeah, and Phantom here has not calced it.
I haven't, but I'll just say it's going to be higher than 1 tenaton.
Probably.
But
if it gets lower,
the one that's...
If it gets lower, that's your fault for calculating.
The one that's on the level of Supernova, or... to be honest, above it, at least visually, is Knights of the Round. Knights of the Round basically is confirmed in the Ultimania to be them literally destroying their space. And then we know from basically any space that's accessed by summons that the celestial bodies in it are real. And we see what seems to be either thousands of stars or honestly galaxies in the space that they're in. And they basically just one-shot it at the end. Arthur does. So that in itself is still a materia that scales, well, a summon that scales below the life stream in its entirety. And Zack himself, who Sephiroth scales above, at least back in Crisis Core, was capable of basically fighting Minerva, which is kind of like the manifestation of the life stream, which, according to even Shinra themselves, scales above any summon they knew of. It's debatable whether or not that fight was canon, but the point is, Supernova is consistent with other feats in the verse, and there are even feats beyond it. in potency. But getting back to the planet, we know that the life stream significantly scales above planetary. It's capable of repairing most damage to the planet. But people will argue, well, Meteor visually doesn't look anything impressive. It's minuscule in comparison to Supernova, right? So how can you still go with the notion that it's like, why would he need it in the first place for the wound? Well, specifically because Meteor is stated consistently throughout the game itself and other material that's canon to the game, that it's the strongest destructive spell. It doesn't have the area of effect of Supernova, but it does have attack potency that's above Supernova's destructive capacity. And there's a difference. This is a blatant example of a difference of it, because of the nature of the black materia, right? It just has way more AP than just the destructive power of Supernova, which is also consistent with Holy being needed to use against it. And Holy has implications of being above pretty much any summon, which would also include Knights of the Round, which just screams basically at the person, this is the power that Meteor has. It's not an anti-feat for Supernova. If anything, lore-wise, it's above Supernova in power, just doesn't have the range of Supernova.
Yeah.
We never get to see the impact because it got stopped at the end of the game, but it still was a powerhouse. So that deals with the Meteor argument. The other argument is characters like Cloud and the others should not be surviving Supernova because it should be above their durability feats. We can talk about the infamous bullet argument in a moment, but Phantom, why not discuss what surface area does to these characters tanking Supernova?
Okay, fine. Fuck you, I'm the calc saver.
Fine.
No wonder I have. I guess I am your little calc champ. Come here.
Surface area restricts you. Anyway.
To explain surface area, the bigger an explosion gets, the more spread out its energy is, and you're going to be taking less energy the further it gets, because more energy is being spread out, and your surface area is going to be surviving less energy the more it spreads out. Basically, TLDR, the farther an explosion is from you, the less energy you're going to survive. And using Supernova, there was a calc on it that got about 7 kilofo, which is solar system level. Applying surface area of Supernova as like a sphere, and using Earth to Sun distance, and then applying average human surface area to Cloud, I got about 760 teratons, or at least like somewhere around the large country level, using surface area as the bare minimum energy Cloud survive, assuming Sephiroth just destroyed the solar system. But as Cyber explained earlier, it likely destroyed an entire galaxy too, which with surface area would upgrade Cloud's minimum durability to be planet level.
Right. I've seen calcs even lower. If you assume,
go ahead.
Yeah, if you assume that like the narrative intent for Supernova was it to be below kilofo, which doesn't necessarily match up with the visuals, but if we humor that for a moment, if it's like, let's say, I don't know why, but 1 foe, it would still be megatons at the very minimum that he'd be tanking. I've seen calcs even quite higher than just like double-digit megatons for that. But yeah, it doesn't match up with the visuals. The visuals would be like what Phantom said, in the kilofo range, at the very minimum. But we've already brought up that basically the feat is consistent. We should bring up that Cloud basically scales to Zack. Zack fought Bahamut Fury and beat it in its own dimension. And we already know that it's capable of using that moon, damaging attack.
Damaging.
And then they just... Well, it does damage the moon quite significantly. It also damages the surface of the Earth, or the planet in that case. Beyond that, they have feats against weapons, which can be relative to some summons. They have basically... There's a summon that's noted as being the strongest of all summons that was defeated by Perks, who Cloud significantly scales above in Before Crisis. Granted, it wasn't at full power, but it was close to full power, to some degree, or at least potentially 3/4.
Close to full power. That
Arguably,
means
if you
1
want to
billionth.
argue,
Yes.
it could potentially have been lower, but the point is, it's not inconsistent for characters like Cloud and other people to be relative to these astronomically powerful weapons and summons. That brings us to the infamous bullets. So,
Fuck! I hate this. I hate this argument.
anyway, Zack canonically died to a bunch of bullets, and Cloud has been pierced by bullets in Advent Children. So, they must be below bullet level, right?
Obviously. Stupid.
I mean, if we ignore all context, then maybe. But let's bring in King context. So, with Zack, very simple. He was Mako poisoned at that point, and the poison had been in his system for quite a bit. So he was significantly weakened than when he normally would be. We get to see what more of a unweakened version of Zack would end up in an alternate timeline shown in Final Fantasy VII Remake, where basically he won. He survived. He didn't die at all. He also visually has no bullet holes on his body. Oh, granted, you could argue he has regen, but the point is, he didn't die in that timeline. So, and it also arguably would be essentially plot-induced stupidity to a degree. We know that he has significant durability feats well above just being pierced by bullets. Heck, Cloud has been hit, like at the beginning of one of the games, was attacked with bullets and was fine. But beyond that, let's talk Cloud for a moment. So the argument is Cloud is basically pierced by bullets in Advent Children, and that must mean he's bullet level. The problem is, he's also dying from geostigma, which is both stated in the film and in basically like an interview for it.
In literally everything that could
killing.
state it, it's stated.
Yeah, it states that it was killing him. So he's not going to be anywhere near his peak. And this is the part that I get confused. Do people not remember that the bullets are from weapons basically made from the essence of remnants of Sephiroth? Very similar how to basically Sephiroth makes Masamune, like when he's summoned back. So why are we assuming the bullets are basically like regular IRL bullets?
Bad
They're going to
power
scale
scaling.
to their users.
Even discounting that, I feel like the biggest damning argument is that Cloud and all of the party members in FF7 in the beginning of the game can survive being hit by bullets and no-sell them.
The other thing is, this ties into Zack. Shinra basically would want to kill him. Like, the whole point of it was Shinra was trying their best to kill him. They sent hundreds of soldiers, maybe thousands. The point is, they know how durable he is, how powerful he is. For them to be using regular bullets to try and deal with someone like that is a bit questionable, which may mean that the bullets themselves were probably scale higher. But the point is that it's not consistent for a healthy Zack to be bullet level at all, or any of Cloud's party, or Cloud himself.
He was poisoned
And
by
there's-
Mako from Kill la Kill.
You mean Makoto?
And now I have a reason to hate Kill la Kill.
I hate you.
I can't believe Makoto killed Zack. We need to have Chie kill her in revenge now.
Or maybe Akame versus Ryuko. Anyway,
Oh, that won't kill Mako. Toe.
it won't, but it will cause Mako suffering.
I'd say Makoto versus Phoenix, but Makoto wins that one, so...
The bullets have been basically aren't consistent at all for their durability. To say that their durability is only bullet level. They have plenty of feats of their own and scaling to a plethora of feats that scale well above that tier. Heck, they deal with Bahamut Sin in the film, and it has a casual feat of basically trying to nuke the entire city they were in, and that's the level of power they're dealing with at that moment. And anyone wants to assert that they're bullet level?
I mean, Vincent goes
should
around
also-
using guns too.
I mean, his guns are still used within Dirge of Cerberus against characters like...
Yeah.
It wasn't Omega in Dirge of Cerberus, if I recall, which is basically like the planet's last resort. which definitely would not be bullet level. We're
Yeah,
talking about like
because
high-end summon tier type.
Vincent and Barrett use guns on really powerful characters, and it works.
I guess that you could argue there might be like a differentiation between like piercing durability and blunt force durability in the verse, which some verses have. Like Naruto might have it. Like Naruto has an establishment that, at least early on, ninjas have leg guardings to prevent themselves from being cut, their skin specifically, while running at high speeds through grass and vegetation or whatever. But that's kind of like not necessarily a definitive thing. It's an extrapolation kind of headcanon, but it might also be a possibility. But
Or just
I
grass
just
level
think
Naruto.
that well, Naruto, like some people argue that in his peak, right? When well, not in his peak, but like when he was an adult in his Kurama state, he got stabbed by Sasuke's sword, and like to argue that means he's sword level, completely ignoring that the weapon itself is basically capable of going up against Jinchuriki and even characters like Madara or Kinshiki. It's not a normal sword at all, which I feel is like the thing going on in Final Fantasy. The Buster Sword or other weapons in the series are not, when wielded properly, right? They're not regular weapons. They're capable of doing damage far beyond normal weapons. So
Oh, didn't you have a statement about how they do superhuman feats due to their willpower or some shit?
yes, so in basically the Ultimanias and an interview with Nomura, they explained that like superhuman feats in the verse and even limit breaks are basically due to emotions and willpower. So the more emotion the character has, sometimes anger or just will, it'll cause an increase within spiritual energy that they use for all of the things that they do, which increases their physicality, which increases their destructive capacity. Like their limit breaks are canonical things they can do, empowered by spiritual energy, which in turn is empowered with their correlation to their emotions. So, like, you could also make the argument that maybe when they're at their low ends, it's due to a differentiation in emotions. They're not at their peak. So that would also take care of any anti-feats at the same time. So, yeah, the weird thing about Final Fantasy VII is outside of the games, within the novels that are canon to the games or the Ultimanias, Nomura and other staff basically have gone and kind of like, maybe we left too many holes, or people just are confused. Let's explain everything, and I mean everything. But Nomura does that, I think, too much.
Nomura leaving holes and then over-explaining to fill them, and thus overflowing the holes? That doesn't seem like a Nomura thing to do.
Oh, that reminds me of something I'll have to mention another time about Kingdom Hearts. That pretty much covers the issues with the Supernova. It's consistently throughout 20 years of publication of different material that's canonical to the series, and not even third-party stuff, just direct first-party interviews or Ultimanias. 20 years or more of just consistency that it's a legitimate thing Sephiroth can do, and basically there's nothing to point to it being an illusion. It's not gameplay mechanics, it's an actual thing. The planet itself cannot be destroyed by Supernova, specifically because it scales above it because of the life stream. It requires Meteor to do so. We know that from the Ultimania and from the comparison to summons that the Earth and the solar system that Sephiroth destroys is within his own dimensional space, which is why it doesn't also destroy Gaia, the main planet. And then they go back to the normal, like back to Gaia itself once Supernova is complete and once the dimension breaks apart. And then we know that they have consistent feats that they scale to or have performed themselves, that being the characters, that makes it not basically an outlier for them to tank it. And even if they do tank it, surface area doesn't make it as astronomically as large as people like to claim, per se. And then bullets completely ignore context to say that they're only bullet level, and any other anti-feats are pretty much dealt with that their power can range based on their emotions. I guess the last thing to get into is, if we're saying that surface area can nerf the amount of energy that they're exposed to from the supernova, can Cloud still scale 1-to-1 with the supernova? And the answer to that question is probably. That being that supernova itself still uses spiritual energy and is compared, or at least hinted to being kind of like Sephiroth's like limit break beyond Octaslash. So that's the case, right? He's still pouring out spiritual energy to use it as a move, and it would still be his quote-unquote strongest attack. And Cloud and Co. are still able to defeat him, which brings up the thing that, and I think Phantom would agree with me with this, people seem to have this weird notion that if a group defeats someone, it somehow invalidates the feat because they must have been exponentially amped, which doesn't make much sense to me unless it's
power of
explained.
love.
I find that
like-
argument very stupid.
Yeah, there's no work at play here pulling a fairy tale power of friendship. I mean, you can even argue in fairy tale itself it's like explained to some degree. I don't think it's explained too well.
It's I would not say it's particularly well explained in fairy tale. Like there's literally a point in the Tenru Island arc where Urza's fighting someone who's using all of the energy of the entire fairy tale guild, and she beats it with the power of friendship just by screaming really hard and hitting him with a long sharp stick. It's not very well explained.
I think the way they try to explain it is like love being like the first magic or something like that, but they haven't really touched upon that in the sequel, which is a failure on them, on their like the lore build, like the world building. But anyway, to get out of that series and back into something that's more quality, at least in my opinion, apologies to anyone, but in Final Fantasy VII, there's really no extrapolation that Cloud and Co. are being somehow exponentially amped beyond their normal levels from fighting Safer Sephiroth. It's a shared feat, yes, but Cloud has been depicted as scaling above his companions, especially in Advent Children. And there, again, there's no magic at play making that they're exponentially amped. At worst, it would be linearly divided, and they'd still be downscale sufficiently to be within that tier. Anyway,
Yeah.
Cloud is usually depicted anyway as being relative to Sephiroth. We even have a statement from Vincent in Advent Children that Cloud is the only one who can stop Sephiroth. Granted, Cloud did so against Sephi to a degree in Advent Children, but once pushed to its limit with like his limit break, he did defeat him.
Though Sephiroth was weakened. Like, he was weaker. Apparently.
Outlier, because can I just say something that was so fucking stupid? I need to vent. I need to rant.
Sure.
Someone on the wiki keeps on saying, it's like, oh, Cloud was stabbed and hurt during his fight with Sephiroth and Avid Children, and so he had to push himself to his limit in order to defeat him while he was hurt, and therefore he can't scale. But I'm like, no! If he was hurt, that makes it more impressive, stupid. Please.
Yeah, Cloud was in a worse state than Sephiroth was, because Cloud was fucking dying.
Should also mention that Sephiroth probably was... I mean, he probably wasn't one-to-one what he was as Safer Sephiroth, but he probably wasn't weakened to like, ridiculous extent. He was still capable of manipulating the life stream, like, his, like, Storm Feat, right? That was just him... I believe Phantom brought this up as well. Moving also... like affecting the live stream as well, so he's still on kind of like it's still a very impressive level, and he still gets defeated by a Cloud who just had previously fought Kadaj and had been fighting previously before that. So Sephi was
he fought
at least
all three
well
of them
at that point.
prior to that, because like right prior to that, he fought Loz and Yazo, and then he immediately jumped to fighting Bahamut Sin. And then he immediately jumped to fighting fucking everything after that. And then he fights a bunch of things in succession leading up to Sephiroth. He was left
so tired at the end that a Mako suicide explosion seemingly did him in. So he was definitely not at his like at full power.
Mako suicide explosion. That's how Mako vs. Chie should end.
Maybe there's something in that uniform that could cause that, but it's a discussion for another time.
Some of you, so I had to leave for a bit. I can hear you now.
We were just mentioning that the way that Chie versus Mako should end is a Mako suicide explosion.
I hate you.
Don't you do prequel quotes at me?
I think we've covered most of wanted to talk about. There is something I wanted to mention. Final Fantasy VII is just not as wacky as other entries, but if Nomura seems to want to do something, it's make it wackier. The remake obviously included the whole time travel shenanigans, but there's something even wackier than that. There's a statement from the remake Ultimania going into how the live stream works for the planet, right? But it also mentions how it works for the universe. And Nemesis, you recall this from our discussion, correct? The basically mitosis.
Yeah, the fucking description that just explains the live stream as a fucking cellular mitosis. It's so stupid.
For the universe itself in its entirety.
God, it's dumb.
So, yeah, I guess if I were to go on to this, basically explains here, spiritual energy grows through a process of separation, joining, and diffusion. This occurs in the same way on a biological, planetary, and galactic level. In other words, the universe is a developing giant body of spiritual energy. And when its energy increases, the universe divides a smaller mass of spiritual energy, like giving birth to a child. This is an egg for a universe. The egg goes to another dimension and ignites a big bang, and there it creates a universe. And by dividing itself, creating galaxies, planets, life forms, and it grows through the process of division and joining. The universe didn't begin in nothingness. It started in a state of highly concentrated, pure spiritual energy.
Is this where Universal Sephiroth comes from?
No. Universal Sephiroth is a different.
It's a universal, the high end, high.
Well, I'll explain in a moment if you really want me to go over it. But this is just basically bringing my earlier argument that the live stream increases the basically essentially quote unquote the durability of the planet, or at least the amount of damage it could take. Further supported in just how wacky and potent spiritual energy is, that it literally can give birth to new universes when enough is accumulated. It's really wacky stuff. Universal Sephiroth, I guess I'll mention right now. It's basically two things. Not counting Dissidia at all. For the story mode, right? The argument for Universal is kind of two or three things. The first one is, since the Milky Way galaxy is shown to be minuscule in the supernova dimension, you can make maybe an argument that it probably has multiple galaxies, but we don't know how many.
It's second debatable. One, I only use it as the highest, and I think Galaxy and Solar System are much safer overall.
And then basically, the next argument is the presence of multiple galaxies in Knights of the Round and characters upscaling beyond it is basically how you would argue it, but that would probably be more safely multi-galaxy. The last one is, in tactics, Cloud is in the game, and there's an argument for Cloud's appearance there to be somewhat canonical. I recall there might be some scaling for Universal there. I believe there's a character in there from Final Fantasy XII that you fight. And then I've heard that there's some Universal... Yeah.
I don't recall anything Universal in 12.
Can't remember if it was Zoriark, or was that how you pronounce his name?
I'll be honest, Universal Vaughn sounds cursed.
Perhaps.
I hate
there's
it.
some I've heard, I would have to double check it myself, but I've heard that there's a universe feat that they tank at the end of Tactics, but don't quote me on that. I'd have to double check that.
If it happens at the end of Tactics, what's the relevancy of Final Fantasy 12 in this?
The Zodiark.
Okay.
If that's how it's called, it's a boss that's in 12.
I don't remember 12 very well. 12 was not a very interesting game.
But yeah, the tactics.
What's better, 12 or 13? I don't hear good things about either.
Oh gosh, let's not get into that discussion.
13 has Lightning, who's more attractive than Vaughn, so 13. There you go.
Anyway, yeah, that pretty much covers everything. The last argument for it would be obviously Dissidia, but that's an entirely separate topic that really doesn't.
No, I was hearing a bunch of people talking about how Remake somehow made Sephiroth universal, and I don't remember.
That's really debatable.
Is it the time related shenanigans?
Yeah, it
Oh yeah,
seemed like
I might as well mention this. In our original recording, Cyber was like, "Oh, so you see, someone I know said that the remake in the end Sephiroth used Supernova." No, this bitch said it was Supernova. He's trying to pin the blame on someone else. This fucking bitch.
The bitch that Phantom is
I
referring to
made
is
a mis-
Cyber.
I made a mistake. So, for context, for people who aren't aware, there's a fireball that's like a humongous one. It's seemingly summoned by Sephiroth in the remake, and then the little time wraiths like seemingly dispel it. But it's actually not Supernova. It's a vision scene for the eventual coming of Meteor. I and a few others I seemingly know have made the mistake of claiming that it's a supernova.
Wait, how many mirrors
And
do you own?
I actually, yeah, I mean, I've also seen some people argue that because it could be like argued as being or they mistook it as supernova, then that's actually the true size of supernova. But it's not supernova. It was just a vision. It literally means nothing. Can't use it to scale. Can't use it to downscale. Yeah, that takes care of the context for that. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Phantom?
Very
Well, I
helpful.
should mention Phantom and several others are probably going to be buying Sephiroth's shampoo.
Yeah, I am. It must sound nice.
I do have to ask, Cyber.
Sephiroth is one of the few males I actually simp for.
And he's a crazy, psychopathic, genocidal maniac. I mean, he is a lot like Star Butterfly in that regard, so I do see your interest.
You had a question?
Fuck you. I fucking hate
So
you.
you're the Nomura stan. Is there any explanation for where the One Wing came from in Advent Children? Like in universe, not out of universe, because I know out of universe it was to reference Safer Sephiroth.
I think in in universe it's also kind of supposed to be the same thing, where it's kind of like an allusion back to not like Sephi kind of like alluding back to that, but I don't recall like in universe ever further like explaining that. It's kind of like a headcanon extrapolation, to be honest.
I am very confused with that. Like, what is Sephiroth's endgame there? Hey, Cloud, look at this. It's the One Wing. Sephiroth, your One Wing used to be white. Oh, shit. Fuck. I meant to do that.
Maybe it got covered by birds.
No, his old Safer Sephiroth One Wing covered in bird shit. That explains it. That's how it became white.
Anyway, originally there was supposed to be a speed section here that I segued in via hostile takeover, but
I mean, do you want to include it? Because like Supernova is related to the speed section, so you could bring it up.
Sure,
It is technically in line with the validity of Supernova.
Sure, I'll make this quick. Zach and Cloud have
Quick.
consistent casual bullet timing feats, last order in their own games. There's a statement in Dissidia that Sephiroth is basically the speed of light. There's a calc for Bahamut Fury going at 1,000 times the speed of light in its run when it does its move. I've seen people argue that it can't be used for reactions because it's travel speed, completely ignoring the fact that it has to be able to react to its own movements because it basically swerves, steers, and changes direction without stopping. And this is a good time to mention that travel speed can scale to reactions if you can prove it. In this case, like, it's not traveling this just a straight line. It's literally having to steer itself, basically perceive its own movements. That you can't really do the opposite. You can't just slap on a reaction feat and say that it's travel speed. But the reverse is fine if you can.
Yeah, I had an analogy for that in the first recording. If you're in a car, you can perceive and react things as you're driving, but you can't run at the speed of the car, even though you can react while moving at those speeds.
Right. Zach would scale regardless because basically can dodge like the little pistons on Bahamut Fury's body that it launches forward. That should be relative to its own travel speed. You also have basically Red 13 being able to absorb energy from stars according to the Ultimania and bring it in for its limit break. You might be able to argue that doesn't necessarily scale to reactions, but it's still like a feat on that level, MFTL. I've seen calcs putting it at millions. And then we get, of course, into the two most impressive calcs for the verse. If you take literally the scene of basically the comet or meteor for supernova going from outside of the Milky Way into it, it could count very low end trillions times the speed of light. And the argument is we have the Ultimania statement that basically Sephiroth brings it down with his hands.
But he
Calls
can't
it.
spell his own fucking name.
And
I'm a real
the other
idiot.
thing, it's stated that like the equations we see on screen, the star map as it's stated in the Ultimania, is literally him calculating everything. So the argument would be that he's using his TK to move it, which I think is fairly reasonable given all the information we have.
And before people say he doesn't scale, Sephiroth flies by using his telekinesis, so...
Yeah, he doesn't fly with the one wing, especially in the first game where he doesn't have it. So, it's like,
He won't scale regardless.
if he's not using his telekinesis to pull the meteor, is he just, like, really praying to God that a meteor is going to show up at perfectly...
Well, the
those
argument I've
points?
seen from DB was that, like, that he sends the opponent into the realm, right? And it's already set up that the meteor is going there, but meteors don't travel at MFTL plus speeds naturally, especially not that fast. And even if that were the case, the star map doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like,
Why would the star map be there? And the
Is he doing it for
equations
fun?
If it was a natural journey. The star map with the equations is basically Sephiroth setting everything up, which would require him to move it. Which makes the not being able to spell his name statement more funny, to be honest.
God, he must hate algebra.
Last thing is basically the shockwave from the Knights destroying their realm with the galaxies. That's also been calced to trillions. The speed of the shockwave. Granted, no one really reacts to it, but it's like another feat of speed on that level in the burst for consistency's sake. That pretty much takes care of speed. There's like a meme calc that was done for one of Barrett's bullets that I think was like Mach 40.
I don't think it's even a meme, it's a genuine feat.
Well, there's also a relativistic feat for one of the weapons, was there not?
It was a very high quad for his limit break, but one of the weapons has a rel feat, I believe.
Yeah. So, yeah, the bullet timing is not necessarily where the verse caps. It's something that is there for the sake of being there. You also have like a statement from Nomura that characters like seem slowed down in Advent Children because the original cut, they wanted them to move faster, but they were having difficulty as it is. Like, there's actually a statement from the staff that when basically Sephiroth and Cloud are fighting, some of the rubble going down seems to be slowed down as if like time is slowed. That was like the best they could work with, but everyone seems to be put on the same level of speed at some points for the sake of entertainment. That's literally in the interview that like the character speeds are basically slowed down or made to seem relative so that people can actually observe. But the characters were meant to go faster and they just had to make do with the limitations they had, which I think further goes into along the lines of these characters can be much faster than people would generally think. Last thing I want to bring up is people probably say, well, if these characters are this fast, right? Why are they named motorcycles? Same thing with brought earlier. Reaction feats
I believe
not scaled to
Nemesis
travel.
already said this.
Yeah, I already said this. Just because
you can steer a car, but you can't move. You can't travel as fast as a car.
it's even relevant there. They can react while on the motorcycle, but they can't skedaddle as fast as a motorcycle. If Sephiroth was on a motorcycle, then maybe there'd be a bit of a problem there, but he's not on a motorcycle.
Yeah, so
Though that would be
that
pretty
covers
cool.
mostly. That pretty much covers most of it. I will be. We will have basically stuff in the description, but we'll also have some stuff on screen for you to see.
Yeah.
And anyway, thank you, Phantom, for joining us.
You're a reluctant.
No-
Shut the fuck up.
Note to the people here, I brought in Phantom by force. Totally was not reluctant. Basically blackmailed Phantom into joining.
Yes,
Fuck
this
you,
was
fuck
definitely
you.
not Phantom's choice. Phantom did not want to be here because they're a lot smarter than Cyber and me, and they knew this was a bad idea from the start.
Anyway, thank you, Nemesis, for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here, both of you. It was fun both times to talk about this.
If it corrupts again, I'm not doing this.
I realized this time I didn't bring up the hypothetical that actually the galaxy or the universe, the realm in Knights of the Round, it's not actually that big. The Knights of the Round just have this really small spherical space, and they got a texter and marker and just drew them on the back to make it look more impressive.
Oh, right. In the last recording, we were bringing up that. I mean, you would win that if the Ultimania didn't flat out say it was a space.
Well, no, but it is a question, like, why would there be galaxies? Like, what's the purpose of them being there if they're not real? Did the Knights legitimately just go, you know, Arthur, this really doesn't look terribly impressive. This just looks like the corner of some crabby basement. Can we, like, make it look a bit more impressive? We want people to think we're cool, you know? We don't want to look like that old geezer Ramu. Pfft, I want to be him.
You know, Ramu is weird because, like, every other summon gets this, like, awesome statement. Like, Ifrit has a statement in Dissidia that it can literally turn the world to ash. Shiva has, like, a statement that can, like, basically, like, save the world from, like, an event that could have destroyed it or endangered it. You have a bunch of others. Even Odin has something. And Ramu gets squat.
I bet throughout the franchise there's probably some big storm feats you can calc that would get, I don't know, megatons, maybe. Phantom should calc the storm that Ramu makes in Final Fantasy 15 when you summon him.
Stand me and I'll try.
Sephiroth has a storm feat in Advent Children that I believe Phantom was able to get to petatons.
Yes, sir.
Wait, what?
Yes, sir.
Petatons is from basically a calc of the area generally that was done by another
There
user.
you go, Phantom.
I just updated with the remake size of Midgar.
And then
right.
kinetic energy, basically because it also involves moving stuff like the live stream.
Phantom, how just
So-
eyeballing the storm Ramu makes, how big do you think it'll be?
I'll check later, but probably megatons. I don't know.
It goes to the horizon, so that's all I can really say for you.
Minimum city level, then I guess.
And I can confirm, if you think that it looks like cloudy before the storm happens, you can summon him literally anywhere, even when it's like super bright out. And also indoors you can summon him and he'll just pull you through the building somehow without breaking it. So
Nice.
I guess he has phasing hacks. Man, even Titan,
Oh,
lame summon like...
You're reminding me of Lex now. I'm sad.
Oh no. Even a lame summon like Titan, who's literally just a big bloke, has an impressive feat, because in Final Fantasy 15 he catches a meteor that was going to wipe out all life on the planet or something. So Ramu really is getting shafted here, and that's really sad.
Ramu seems cool.
I mean, have you seen his beard? That's a beard.
Yeah.
He's like giant thunder Santa Claus. That's Ramu.
Nemesis will forever be known as Ramu Simp from now on.
Or Cyber will forever be known as a simp for a certain fairy tale character.
We don't talk about that. We do not talk about that.
No,
Anyway.
simping.
Anyway, I just think that the general notion that Final Fantasy VII can't go above kilotons or is stuck at bullet level is just something I really wanted to kill off. And I just want to say, if you still think that Supernova is an illusion after this, well, I think you're committing a crime of intelligence. Don't be like
crime
Sephiroth.
greater than Cyber's hatred for Canada.
Don't be Sephiroth. Don't be the kind of people who can't spell the name.
Yeah, Sephiroth can't even spell Canada.
Anyway, thank you for having me on. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys can say goodbye. Thanks for being here. And yeah. Phantom,
Farewell,
try to say goodbye only one time this time.
Adios.
Farewell, Mario.
Alright, goodbye guys.